We're going to talk about practical implementations of different types of tools, whether they're LLMs or MCP or various automations or not using any of the technology. I want to bring up 4 folks that are, I don't like the word expert in a room of so many experts, but 4 entrepreneurs who are using these tools in daily settings and see what actually is working. What's helping make them money or make life easier. And hopefully you all in the audience can walk away with something interesting to try, or walk away and not try something that might not have worked and save yourself painful hours of trying to make something work. So I want to let them all introduce themselves. I didn't introduce myself, sorry. I'm Jason, I'm the CEO of Massive. I run a proxy infrastructure company. Hi, everyone. Guys, please.
Okay, hi, everyone. I'm Misha, the CEO and founder of Parcera, where we are building, essentially, making LLMs to build the web scrapers for the companies who are tired of maintaining hundreds of their own web scrapers, which can just automate that. And for last year, I'm applying AI and LLM in the web scraping space, and more broadly for the last 3 years, I'm working, 2.5 years on AI agents, and before it was popular, essentially.
Hello everyone, my name is Breno, I'm CEO of BitMaker, and we work on open source web scraping and crawling infrastructure for on-premise and cloud.
Hi everyone, I'm Joe. I'm a go-to-market advisor. Primary company I'm working with right now is called Featherless AI, and it offers serverless inference, access to open source models basically with an unlimited token window. And on the side, I'm also working on my own startup.
Hey everyone, my name is Jim. I used to be head of development for a digital product agency in London, but now I work as an AI freelancer. And I help clients who are not very technical, but technically willing to try and adopt LLM into their business processes and, operations.
All right, can we get a quick round of applause for our panelists today? Just keeping you guys on your toes. Okay, so the first question, I'd like to know the most exciting kind of workflow, whether you're using LLMs or MCP or whatever it might be that you've worked on the last few weeks. So super relevant. What's the most exciting new tool or project that you've been working on? And how has it impacted your or your client's business?
All right, so I would say Gemini 2.5. It's for us and all the. In general, I'm using Gemini a lot for my coding. Before I used other specialized tools, but I found that the Gemini works the best for me. And 2.5 just feels like a big leap forwards in terms of the amount of intelligence it has, and it relates both to my coding when I could do the code, but also in our product. We had some cases when we just see that model we used Gemini 2.0, that Gemini was just too stupid to solve its problem. So it managed to solve it 1 in 10 times, and now Gemini 2.5 will solve it every second time, let's say. So it's really if someone didn't try Gemini 2.5, I really advise you to do it tomorrow.
Great. This is not so exciting, but so 2023 was a difficult year for us. We had to cut costs a lot. 2024 was a much better year, but we've continued with that trend. We're a bootstrap company. We're trying to keep it like that as long as we can. So there is one particular thing that is solution architecture. Basically, we do estimations for customers for web scraping projects, and that takes a lot of time. So we've increasingly, in iterations, been trying to use AI to automatize and reduce costs. So I agree with what Sebastian was saying about AI making things easy, but it also makes things cheap. So we started making use of note-taking software, Fathom, Firefly. But we built, like, over the course of 3 years, quite a big database of estimations, which have been very well, let's say, classified, very well structured. So we are trying to take it to the next level. We started with note-taking, just to automate things, and we are now trying to use AI in order to actually not necessarily replace solution architects, but make their lives easier. One tool I can recommend that we're now just starting to test is called Scribe, and it's kind of like an extension to a browser where you can record, annotate, video, images, which makes estimations and requirements gathering very easy. So not so exciting, but very helpful in order to reduce costs.
So just to summarize, Fathom and Scribe. Fathom, Fireflies, and Scribe.
And Scribe.
And this is for note-taking on calls.
Yes.
Okay, and I've been using Granola. Granola. I'm not a paid ambassador for Granola, but it does an awesome job of writing notes for calls, so I highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would actually add on to that. I have a lot of experience in the note-taking space, having worked for a note-taking app called Fellow. I will drop it there. But I think one of the things that I tell companies right away as soon as I start talking to them is I ask them, are you using a note-taking app? And are you using it for your customer calls? And I think that it's super important for anybody building a business that all of their customer calls need to be recorded from the beginning, or product discovery calls. I think that it's like so fundamental to making a great business, because all of that knowledge that your customers are giving you, you need to be able to very rapidly kind of like feed that back into the business. And separately, I think that, some of the hacks that you get from doing this when you have a note taker and notes, things that I started doing very rapidly was you want to like build out your Notion or your wiki, and you can, if you get into the habit, you can actually like document very rapidly the habits that you have, the lessons that you've taught people, or the conversations that you had around your product or around how you're supposed to do things, and just super rapidly document that. And I think the step that you can add on top of that, which can make you move so much faster, is that you then need to figure out, like, every single time that you're building something within the company, you want to figure out how do you make this friendly to an LLM or to AI or to some chat. Because that will actually allow you to like multiply the impact of the knowledge that you're creating across the business. Because you create so much knowledge through conversation with people and as you build out the business. So that's something that I personally did a lot of, was like figuring out how to like feed LLMs all the great personas and sales conversations to be able to then use that in the future for other departments.
So in February of this year, I implemented deep research in NA10. Yeah, I'm that guy. Could it be done? I just kind of wanted to prove it, that it could. And yeah, fantastic. I built it, and it was quite, widely accepted by the community. And yeah, definitely learned a number of techniques in there, and it sort of, I was using Apify to get Google results, get the agent to make its own Google search, and then figure out where it wants to kind of go next. So it kind of does a deep recursive search into Google to kind of find answers to your topic. And I think Jan, CEO of Apify, reached out and said, hey, check out RAG web browser. It's fantastic. So it's a fantastic tool which does the whole Google search and get contents back at the same time, which I thought was very exciting. I think it's a testament to where it's going, the kind of tools that we're using is going. So after that, it puts the research in Notion. And it was super fun to build.
So you're using Apify to get Google search results, throwing that into deep research and into Notion.
Yeah, so yeah, agents just using it to go crazy, really.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Apify, did you plant him here? Okay. Also not an ambassador. There's a lot of you here. All right, cool. So speaking of scraping, what tools have you found work the best? And like what kind of, if you could share a use case and what tool works well, maybe something that didn't work well. Like you said, Apify is working great, and the app you use for scraping Google, awesome. Have you tried any of these like LLM scraper where you could just chat it a little bit and it'll get you some results? Have you tried it at different scale? Have you had to use scraping APIs? You use raw proxy? What works best for your scraping jobs?
You want to go this way?
Whoever.
Yeah, so I've been trying out a lot of, so kind of nature of my work is I've been trying out a lot of services, trying to find the best ones for clients. I've tried firecrawl.dev. Yeah, and then I found it's fantastic in that we no longer have to care about much about layout of the, and I think that the trend is everything's kind of moving from HTML to Markdown, and I kind of feel maybe that's the future of web pages. Is maybe Markdown is the optimal format that you can use like between humans and LLMs. So yeah, just converting a page to Markdown has been fantastic for scraping.
Can you share what kind of page you were converting? Was it like a product page? Was it a search result or job listing? What was it? Or what have you tried?
Yeah, so I've tried it on retail listings, product kind of inventory pages, even to build a RAG knowledge base on kind of a client's website. So, okay. Yeah.
And is it one-off, or are you able to use it for, at what scale can you use Firecrawl in this example? Or is it like 1 page, 100 pages, 1,000, million?
My budget's not that big, but I'm assuming if you continue to pay for it, you can use it indefinitely. But yeah, it's again, Firecrawl is just one example of stuff. So obviously, Apify is not paying me to say this, but I have moved to Apify to do a lot of that scraping because there's cost considerations when you're scraping hundreds and thousands of pages.
Cool, got it.
All right, LLMs and scraping. So we got started as a company that built custom scrapers. We offer source code, so that's something that customers wanted. But in many cases, custom web scrapers break. So we found that not necessarily the open source alternatives, but the platforms like, for instance, there's many companies, including Apify, for instance. I know Massive is working on this kind of stuff as well. But for companies that want custom scrapers, because they have specific requirements, to have a fallback from your custom scraper to an API or an LLM, sharing the same scheme, of course, makes it so much easier, to work and recovering the scraper itself when it goes down. So that has been very helpful, for sure.
Okay, so.
And if I may add, it was great meeting Marco and Lorenzo from ScrapeGraph. Great project. We're looking also to work together. You should definitely check them out. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in that space.
Okay, so I have 2 dimensions maybe. The first one is around what we are building. Is essentially both of them, but one is about LLMs. If you will plan to build some custom pipelines for like in-house to use LLM to extract the data, like something that Zeit, for example, has in like this LLM extractor. I actually asked the question, I asked Ivan about it. Be aware that even though it appears that you just have plain text and you need the model to extract some pieces out of it, you can think about it as a very simple problem for LLMs. It turns out that actually it's not. And there are 2 dimensions to consider. The first one is the more stuff you throw into LLM, the harder it is for LLM to find what you need. And so you have to be careful what you're throwing and try to reduce as much as possible the context. The second part is that even if you have small context, if it works fine, there is still a boundary of LLM size to have great performance for long outputs. So the more model has to provide you as an output, the more the chance that it will hallucinate. So if you really have long outputs to extract, you have to use bigger models. This is about maybe the LLM part. The other part is about the proxies. Can I drop the names of what I didn't like?
Sure. You aren't using massive, so
I didn't.
drop all of the things that you didn't like.
I'm not using a massive, but we used massive competitor. It's called Packet Stream, and Packet Stream and these like cheap proxy services. You can really have very cheap service, but you have to be aware what are the drawbacks of them. And the drawback is that you have usually have low success rate. So your pipeline has to be fault tolerant. The other part is that you also have high latency. So your pipeline has to be high latency tolerant. So you have to be aware of these cheaper proxy services. And if you want something faster and higher success rates, you have to prepare to pay more.
That makes sense to me. Do you want to add some insights, or are you cool? Okay, great. So I'm wondering what has been the hypiest product that you have tried that everyone, I don't know who everyone is, but they're out there on the internet, is talking about, and you tried it and it didn't work. What happened?
I'm not sure whether so I have this story about V0. It's maybe, it actually worked for me at the beginning, but it stopped to work at all at some moment. Because if you will visit Coursera website, I would tell you the secret that I started, the whole website started with a lot of vibe coding a year ago. And I used V0 a lot back then because I'm a strong Python developer, but not strong JS developer. And what I ended up with is that, a small project where you have very, very narrow thing to do, it works fine, but bigger, more complex programs will never, I don't believe that they will be automated by transformers, and we have to invent something new. And another thing is that I just stopped using V0 at some moment at all because I started to think...
hold on, who knows what V0 is? Raise your hand if you know what V0 is. Why don't you just explain what V0 is?
V0 is essentially, the pitch is that you type the prompt and you get the front end as the output. So they provide, back then they used to generate one file or two files. Now the pitch is that they create the whole app for you. So the problem was that, essentially I stopped using V0 because I started to develop the front end in a way to be optimal for the maximum leverage of vibe coding, let's say. So for all the stuff that don't depend on the other components, other pieces, I would just isolate them and essentially use LLM like Gemini, for example, as a copilot, and we will came up with how it's supposed to work. Because something like V0 will fail if you have 30 files, and 30 files is not a huge project.
All right, so this is also low-hanging fruit, but going back to 3 years ago, we had a marketing agency that worked with us, and at the point where we needed to save costs during the terrible year of 2023, which I think was terrible for a lot of companies, we said we will do everything ourselves. So we did basically two things. We started doing content generation with ChatGPT back in the day. And yes, it is amazing, but of course, what it will output will be very generic, So that didn't work that well for us. If your objective is to just put out content on a very frequent basis, that might help. I'm not saying it's not helpful to brainstorm ideas. I'm not saying it's not helpful to do an outline of what you say, but you have to get yourself in there to just think that this will generate interesting content. No, it will not. And the other thing was we also had third-party services for cold mailing. You would think, oh, who does cold mailing nowadays? Well, a lot of people do, and it does work. So basically, we were using this tool that was like AI, like lead generation. Really, from my experience, I'm not trying to teach bad mouth anyone, but from my experience, it is the actual contact database for emails, for contacts, that is the valuable thing. Everything else, we replicated in less than a month. Everything around running your own mail servers, running, doing the prioritization, doing the follow-ups, everything we implemented in less than 1 month, not even a full time, and that was with AI, and that was very helpful. Contact databases, that's another thing, I was looking for good ones, but automating the actual platform for mailing was very easy.
I want to ask the audience a question, or a series of questions. I'll decide momentarily. Stay on your toes. One, who has used LLMs to generate content? Who's used it, or tested it at least? Okay, who thinks they have found a way to use it well? And those same people, I guess, who has found a way to use it without having to curate it after you've prompted, and to have it pretty much self-sustaining, working on its own? Okay, so it seems like from the audience, we're gonna talk. This gentleman back here, he knows, he's got the secrets. We're gonna talk about this, but it seems like it still has to be at least pretty managed. Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Yeah, so on my side, and for all the non-developers, I definitely got sucked into the hype of vibe coding. I wanted to go and build something. I took a look at all the options, Lovable, V0, Replit, and I said, hey, I'm not a coder, so let me go with a Replit, because they say that it's more of it can do the back end. I don't just want the front end. So I can't do the back end, so I better use Replit. Yeah, that was a rabbit hole, I think. For the non-developers, I think that these vibe coding tools, they're just so confident about what they're going to build you. And on the surface, it seems like it's really going to make a lot of sense, but I really, really got the sense that you have to be so specific about what you want to build. So I tried to build in a layer that had both an agent for reasoning and then access to a bunch of tools, including Playwright. And I wanted it to go ahead and reason through the whole thing and start browsing the web and extracting data. That was a very over-ambitious project from my side. I came to the conclusion very rapidly after talking to people who know a lot better, like the people sitting around me, that actually it's better to find an open source project and then to use Cursor on your local host to play around with the tools. So I wanted to get my hands on a tool that could do some browser automation, some browser agent. And the best way was just to find a project like browser use. So I tested out browser use, got it on my local hosts, and it works. It works fantastic. And that way you can really control and start to test the tool. I think maybe the other lesson learned is that for non-developers or for entrepreneurs out there, it is actually really important to get your hands on the technology because there are massive limitations. And I actually think that the value is to find the fastest way to get feedback from the tools. So actually, by now, me being able to use browser use on my local host, it's great because I can start prompting it and seeing where it fails miserably. And that allows me to better understand how I can direct, a product person or a technical person. So yeah, a last tip of something that half worked.
Wait, I want to just make sure, who knows what Cursor is? Everyone know what Cursor is?
Oh, nice. So Cursor is basically an agent that you can talk to that will help you code on your local host. So you can feed it a project and then ask it questions about the project. Replit is similar to V0. with the pitch that it does backend, and it has a cursor basically type agent inside of the application. Yeah, last thing I would say is I did try E2B, of course, wanting to support the local tech scene here in Prague. If you don't know what E2B is, you should check it out because you're in Prague. But it allows you to run, they have like a bunch of templates to run tools in a sandbox, like AI tools, without having to build the infrastructure. And that does let you get your hands on the tech. But I did run into a lot of limitations trying to do anything with the sandbox. Frankly, as a non-developer, it was a bit tough to get past the initial demo for me.
Yeah, so for me, a bit of a controversial one. So I'm going to still say it like on the risk of getting shot, but for me this year, DeepSeek R1 specifically was a big disappointment for me. Not because obviously they had a DDoS attack and it didn't really work, but for me it was just something that, at least it's like just something to soften or maybe kind of like loosen America's grip on the technology, because I mean, obviously we've only talked about American companies. We haven't really mentioned any European companies. We haven't mentioned any Chinese companies, and
Lovable is European.
oh yeah, I don't think we mentioned it today. We did, briefly. Okay, but yeah, but it's like DeepSeek was it going to be the answer, right? And yeah, I mean, with a few of my clients, we said, you know, like because we're using R1, very expensive, you know, maybe R1 was going to be the answer to that. But yeah, it was just really disappointing that it didn't work, and I guess we're still waiting for something to come up from our side of the pond, I guess.
Can I add something to that? Yeah, I'm not gonna get into like no, yes, no, not gonna get into that. But the one thing I can say is that you would remember, everyone here would remember that not long time ago it was not so clear whether open source would make it in AI, you know? Okay, we had Llama, yes, of course, but it was DeepSeek, regardless of anyone's opinion on it, that really cemented the fact that open source in AI is here to stay. We have nice things like Grok, not Grok from X, but Grok, the inference platform, is great and it's making very cheap. But I do hope that we will get to a point with costs dropping and everything where running the LLMs locally at scale will make sense. And for that, we have, of course, Llama, but also DeepSeek to thank for, yeah, regardless of the quality, which is controversial, okay.
I would love to hear more specifically why DeepSeek is disappointed. Like, I would love to hear like you go walk through like.
I think walk through it in like, you know, a sentence or two.
I mean, it's a controversial topic, and it really depends on what you're really using it for, right? So, but for me, it's I mean, for the hype that it received, you know, like stock market crash, like, you know, kind of putting everyone on edge. You know, just for like a lot of my work to do with like document parsing, like kind of extraction, like many people are doing here, and yeah, and it just didn't kind of live up to sort of standards. I mean, it was, for me, it was, maybe I'll get shot for this one. It's got 2 bullets now.
This is a safe space, everyone. Just a heads up.
But for me, for the work I was doing, it was comparable to 4.0 Mini. So, which was, yeah, probably just, maybe I was using it wrong. I would love someone to kind of educate me on that. But yeah, I've been trying out a lot of these kind of new LLMs as they come out, and it just wasn't there for me.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I want to open this up for some questions from the audience. If we have questions from the audience. Does anyone have questions for our panelists today? Oh, yeah, thanks. Just yell your questions, don't worry.
Hi, I want to ask, you told us that you tried to use E2B, but you ran into some limitations you didn't like. Could you tell us about the limitations, what you didn't like?
This is the founder of E2B.
Oh no, it's a trap. Yeah, like I said, non-developer here, but I ran into implementations running the browser the browser app that you guys had because I couldn't get the environment to work locally. But this is probably just me being foolish, to be honest.
No, that's on them, you know. Like it should be really simple to set up.
Yeah. It seemed like there was something different from the I don't know, the version that you guys had in the sandbox worked perfectly fine, and then once I tried launching it on my local, it didn't work. But
Okay, thank you.
that's all. We'll talk after. Yeah, you can tell me more.
So I would like to ask Breno about, you mentioned the on-premise solution, and I like your question also in the previous presentations. So what is your vision about the on-premise solutions in web scraping industry?
Okay, that's a great question, because usually I would have said something, I think maybe controversial, but for me, cloud has hit its peak. Okay, like on-premise never went away. And there were a few promises around cloud, which was, it's gonna be cheaper. No, it's not gonna be cheaper. You know, you won't need people, it will run itself. No, it's not the case. There is one use case for cloud, which is like when you're starting to like launch and everything, which makes it very, very, very obvious. But for predictable workloads, on-premise, just on costs alone, never mind data sovereignty, never mind control, you know, like, you cannot be on-premise. That being said, with AI, I'm backing off of this statement, you know, because AI workloads are very, very expensive, you know. So from the scraping side of things, why I think on-premise works, it's because you can have flexibility. You can run things locally, you can have custom scrapers, you can rely on third-party APIs for a lot of things, you can make fallbacks towards it, you know. We'll see how it goes with AI. My wish is that LLMs will drop in costs, you know, inference will be much cheaper, so it will be able to run things locally. But I'm still bullish on a hybrid model. There will be, the cloud will not go away. When I was saying it's reached its peak, I'm not saying it's going away. I'm just saying that it's not going to grow forever and on-premise is going to be a thing of the past. I'm just saying that hybrid is the way I see the future. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boy.
Okay, so what comes next after the chat window, which seems to be all the hype right now?
After the what? Can you say
The
that?
chat window, the chat box,
The chat box.
the interface to the AI.
When it comes to web scraping, I think the one thing that is interesting is very brief. It's multimodal. You know, so chat is one way of interfacing, but for you to actually be able to do it, to do LLMs in web scraping really well, you need to go multimodal. You need to analyze images. You need to analyze potentially even videos if you're doing screen recordings. So in our case, for instance, you know, thinking multi-agent, we would love to be in a place where, for instance, customers will come to us and ask in chat, submitting screenshots, I want to scrape this is the workflow I want to follow. And this agent, which is the requirements gathering agent, would communicate with the, let's call it the agent who actually outputs the scrapers who run on whatever you're running on your platform, and there will be agents doing the debugging, you know, agents doing like smaller tests, agents working directly with QA people. Basically, that's, I think it's the next step. And I know there's companies that right now are working in multimodal approaches to web scraping, not only chat prompts. That's actually happening right now.
Just referring to your comment, I think the chat interface is a full interface for the web scraping use case, because every time we build or roll out something on LLMs as a product, every time we tried the chat interface, the problem was that you give so much freedom to the customer. Basically, it's infinite. You can type whatever he wants. And in case you're building a LLM model or something that need to talk with the customer, then it makes sense because it's a natural way of interacting with something that's talking. But if you have specific problem that you are solving, your interface has to narrow down the amount of freedom the customer has to actually help him to do the things correctly from the first shot, because otherwise he will type something wrong and it will never work. So essentially, if you the narrower use case you have, the narrower the interface has to be. That's why for the web scraping, I believe that it shouldn't be a chat. Ideal interface is I just describe what I want once and I get back the data and that's it. I don't need to send some follow-on messages and stuff because it has to work. If it works, I don't need that at all.
I think this is our last question. Make it count.
Oh man, all right, I can do that. So I know you mentioned the sort of European market, or just the lack of sort of major European companies. I guess there's Lovable and like Mistral or something. But I'm curious because I'm a newly minted European actually over the last couple months. And I've talked to people about this, and there seems to be like differing opinions on this. Like maybe it's regulatory, maybe it's like the VC ecosystem here. And as founders in that space in Europe, what do you think is the cause of the lack of sort of big, sort of innovative European sort of AI-facing companies?
I'm going to step in to take this one, and you guys could add to it if you want to. The life cycle of building a great ecosystem usually comes first with companies that have outsized success in an area. Employees that are a part of this with like an equity, some kind of normal equity structure benefit. And you get lots of angel investors and new founders out of that. The angel investors, seeing that this has worked before for themselves, their colleagues, their bosses, then invest back into the ecosystem. And generations of this happen to build a great ecosystem. Silicon Valley, you started with like Sun Microsystems. You started with the internet. I mean, before it was the internet, in the 60s and 70s. And so they're just generations ahead. You see it in New York too. New York is doing really well. It's still like a generation behind Valley. Valley is where you go for big vision, huge funding. New York is good, but a little bit behind. You see it with London. And so the way that I've seen it, happy to get more feedback on this, is we've just been through more iterations of companies getting big, creating more founders, more angels, investing back, hiring back, training, and this happening over and over again. So I have no doubt that there can be great tech hubs that continue to develop in Europe and around the world. It's just a matter of time.
I would say I would follow on this. So Jason described the problem that we have today, but there is a reason why, let's say, Bali and New York is ahead of European hubs, and I would say that the biggest problem is the size of the market, because Europe is not one market. Essentially, this is the main problem, because if you want to launch product in Europe, you couldn't launch it in Europe. You have to launch it in Germany. You have to launch it in Spain. You have to launch it in France. You have to go one by one. And in case of the US, you're launching the product for the whole big market. That's why, for example, we have China that's emerging right now, because they have huge market. And with a huge market in the internet, software companies, they scale very well. So you set up it once and it scales in the US for a big market, in China to a big market, in Europe it scales to one country out of all of that. So Europe has to fix it first. There are some, they trying, recently there is an initiative pushed by founders to actually create, they call it 28th legal entity in Europe. So at least you can register the company that will have the same rules in any European country. But this is still a baby step to the whole common market.
I agree with both of your views. I would just like to add, I'm kind of like a newly minted European as well. I was originally born in Barcelona, but lived most of my life in Peru. So I've moved to Berlin 2.5 years ago. And the one thing, for me, it's also very important that Europe gets into the race, you know. And something that I've seen is that maybe not individually, maybe not the companies operating in Europe, but from the perspective of the European Union, which is a good thing. There's not been wars in Europe for, well, quite a lot of time, 80 years. But from the perspective of the agenda that the European Union is pushing, I think they're concentrating on the wrong things. So, for instance, one of the latest initiatives of the European Union is working on a European browser, you know, or let's play catch up. So X is doing this, we don't agree with X, let's make our own social network. And I think that is not the key. You're playing catch up. And AI, you know, and automation in general provides, let's say, kind of a level field where everyone has the opportunity to take the lead. And I think it's very important for European companies in our industry and in general, European companies working with software to gather together and to try to fight this, you know, one important thing that AI is bringing is that it will not be far-fetched to be thinking of unicorns made of 2 persons or 3 persons. So that gives a lot of opportunity for new, very valuable companies to be created without a lot of capital. And that in turn will make, what you were saying, Jason, that it will be like a wave effect, you know, like this will push it forward. But yeah, I think a lot of work remains for Europe to get into the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I echo a lot of what you guys have already said. I think that Europe is in a great position, though, because we are now seeing multiple generations of founders that are creating the ecosystem within their individual markets. And I've had the opportunity to kind of see the difference between what the community can look like, even just in Canada. Where I worked for one of the founders that has built a huge community in Canada. And that network is so powerful because those entrepreneurs continue to help each other out. That said, though, I think that the single market is absolutely a problem. It's one of the things that I dislike the most about Europe as somebody who does go to market, because it increases your costs so much to try to enter all these individual markets once you start to really think about it. So I think that one of the things that you should and almost have to think about right away as a company is you should always think about launching global first. You should always think global when you're building your business. It's fine to take advantage of the home field advantage and get great relationships with companies in your country. That is always gonna kind of like give you that first edge, those first proof cases. But you have to be ready and planning to launch in the US and North American market from the beginning. I think that the world has changed a little bit, and you used to be able to build a copycat company in Europe and feel a little protected, right? Because you had some barrier, and that's going away. In some ways, though, I actually think it's a good thing that it's going away, that the market globally is maybe much more porous than it used to be, because I also think that whether we like it or not, I think the English language, something that I've noticed generationally is people are growing up with fantastic English these days. And I actually think that will in its own help unify the European market. So I actually think that we are at the beginning of a really fantastic and thriving European startup community.
I'm probably the least qualified to speak on the subject, but I know it's not for lack of ambition, enthusiasm, or drive. But Europeans have that in abundance. But yes, I'm definitely, like you guys said, hope it improves, I guess.
Everyone, stay seated after this for like 2 more minutes, but I just wanted to applaud for our panelists. Thank you so much. It's been a great discussion. you guys can step down. I'll say a few, give some logistical stuff. Thank you guys. Thanks, appreciate it.